Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week on the show, we always bring on someone who's doing something interesting and game-changing in business, and this week is no different. I have the pleasure of having Christoph Bornschein, CEO of TLGG, in from Germany to have a great chat today. It's going to be a really great interactive conversation. Have a listen. Hi, Christoph. What time zone is it?
The inside time is 5:20. The real time seems to be 11:20. So I'm six hours ahead.
It's only 6 hours. We're so excited to have you on the show. It's always fun when I get folks who don't normally live in the U.S., especially in New York, to come chat with me. So I think this will be a hilarious conversation.
Let's see. At least my accent is going to be hilarious. So
well, that's what I'm saying. I just the weekend with a bunch of Germans, so for me, it's like water. So, question for you first off: what was your first job?
Interestingly enough, it was when I was 14, and I worked at a gas station that told me all and everything about sales. Gas stations and doing some sales activations in gas stations is highly contributing to who I am.
How in the world does working at a gas station teach you this?
Basically, what I figured is that gas stations can be a really highly entrepreneurial ecosystem if you try to sell up. And this is basically, it is boring to work in a gas station. Let's be clear about that. So it's basically selling gas. So how I kind of try to kill the boredom is do upsales with people that actually didn't want to buy stuff.
Oh, like you want a car wash or you need some candy.
Yeah. Or what about some rolls? Did you see our sausage selection and all that kind of stuff?
In Germany, you can get sausage at the gas station?
Oh, yeah, you can.
It doesn't happen in the U.S.
Pure sausage is kind of a German thing in gas stations. Hot dogs is, and the best hot dogs are a Swedish thing, which I just saw in Sweden. So, yeah. Europe is buying sausages at gas stations.
There are so many jokes.
Pretty much.
There's so many jokes there, I can tell. All over my head.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you go from selling sausage at the gas station and figuring out how to upsell to becoming the CEO of TLGG? What's that circuitous path?
It's kind of it's an entrepreneurial story that before actually setting up TLGG involves building a CRM company in the energy world at the age of 17 in the first wave of liberalization of the energy market in Germany, selling the company with 19, setting up another company in the travel e-commerce, selling that again, and then doing an IPO with a massive multiplayer online gaming company. So,
So you haven't really been busy your entire life?
I spend my life building companies and selling or operating companies. So TLGG, when we started that in 2008, which is now 11 years, is kind of the longest stint that I've ever been on to. And I kind of preserved that energy of building new companies with my investment company, Bornschein and No Daughters, which I'm doing on the side.
Bornschein and No Daughters?
Yeah, because it's not legal to call a company Bornschein and Daughters if you don't have daughters that own equity.
Seriously?
Yeah. So it's the law. So I had to. The original idea was actually calling it Bornschein and Daughters, but it isn't legal because it's telling that there's daughters.
But they really aren't actual heirs.
So now it's pretty clear and outspoken. It's no daughters.
Until you have a daughter one day.
Yeah. No, she has to own equity. It's not legal having a daughter. She has to be an equity owner.
Wow.
So building companies and running and operating companies and now investing into companies is what I've been doing for the best part of the last 19 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so all right, we're gonna back up here.
Yeah.
So you're 17 and you start an energy company just because
CRM in the energy world. So it was specific to energy, but it
from
was
a gas station thing.
Yeah, it's kind of you see the line from gas, which is energy, to energy, which is energy. I was quite obviously one of those kids that started with playing around with the C64, Amiga, and all that kind of stuff. So I taught myself enough of coding to be capable of building CRM software as one of the worst team members in building software. So where it all boiled down to is that everyone understood that I'm not a good coder, but a great salesperson. So
does it.
we the six of us set up this company, won the first client, which was a newly formed energy supplier, liberalized market that needed CRM software. And what we did is bring innovation into CRM software just accidentally, because we at that point built CRM software the way we thought CRM software should be, not knowingly that it quite obviously wasn't the status quo in the energy world to have great CRM systems, great customer experience and stuff like that. So it was proved to be quite successful. Scaled that up to about 100 people over the course of 2.5 years, and made that be a thing.
So it's funny because I think that's oftentimes the thing that people don't realize about entrepreneurs, that the reason we can be successful is because we're not looking at the board. Yeah. We're going to create our own. And because if we always knew if we knew ahead of time what we were diving into, we'd never do it.
And in this specific case, the naivety that we had was just it was natural, because we didn't know anything about energy CRM, and we didn't benchmark ourselves. We just came up with an idea of how we thought it would work, and build it.
It's the Richard Branson, screw it, just build it.
I wasn't aware of the existence of Richard Branson at that time. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you sell the company number one.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I sold this company. I'm 19.
Yeah. So.
I don't love college.
I did attend law school for the lack of a better idea and some pressure of my parents.
I was going to say, like, at some point, what your parents being like, oh,
no, they felt that a traditional career would be kind of interesting. So I did law school, and in parallel did the other company. Did some quite amazing stuff around, and we're talking early stage web development. So booking your travel on the internet was not the normal thing to do. So we built that, and it proved to be successful. Sold the assets to one of the largest energy travel providers now. And then I focused on law, at least that's what I thought. And a friend of mine came along and said, Christoph, we have that brilliant idea that we brought from Asia. People at some point will not buy boxes with computer games anymore. They will download and play in online worlds, which today it sounds pretty obvious. At that point it was like, this is not going to be happening. And back in the days, there was a massive market in Asia, specifically in Korea at that time, where you could be a professional gamer in 2005.
Oh my gosh! So we're going back way back.
We're 2005, and he said, "Okay, we went to Taiwan and we bought some licenses of games, and we wrote this incredible digital equity story and want to IPO the company. Would you mind joining forces and building the marketing capability for downloadable games?" And I basically said, yeah, I'm bored by my law studies, which was the case. So it was kind of the escape door I was looking for.
You knew the trap door.
Yeah. So I took that door. In 2006, we did the IPO and started to scale that business. And when we left in 2008 to set up TLGG, we at that point were the biggest player in that field in Europe. Built a US operation. It was crazy times, earning your money with virtual swords and cloaks and all that kind of stuff. So this is well
before Call of Duty, this is well before...
Yeah.
Any of these Grand Theft Auto, any of those guys, like the power of putting it on.
It was in the early days of World of Warcraft. So World of Warcraft back in the days, I don't even know if it is still the case, was a subscription-based model, and we did, and that was new to the market, item-based. So free to play, but you had to pay for your whatever magical sword, the dragon to ride on and stuff like that. And we introduced that model to the European market. Solely based on games that we licensed in Asia. So it was quite interesting to see that happen.
Awesome. Okay, so you've now had 3 successful companies.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so now I'm bored again.
It was on one hand side boredom, because we kind of figured out how to do that, and I always felt that the most interesting part is actually figuring out how it works, and we then had to hire a lot of game masters, and people that basically were totally deep into games. So I sat around with people that on the weekends did live action role play. Took swords and basically went to cosplayers, LARP, as it is called in the EU. So we decided that this is not really what we wanted to pursue. Because it wasn't about the early days building up an operation. And what we came up with, and that is kind of the initial idea of TLGG, is, okay, we now prove that digital business models can create value. Looking into where we see corporates going, we feel that digital business models isn't what they're tapping into. And we saw some potential. And we've been, prior to actually being on air, we talked about Lufthansa. So looking into flying from A to B, we felt that digital value creation, adjacent business models were what they would be needing. Telco providers with whatever, video on demand platforms and stuff like that. So Netflix wasn't there at that time. So we built TLGG to basically be a consultancy for corporates to come up with digital means of value generation. So marketing, communication wasn't kind of the first thing that we thought about. But the development made us think about that because I think 4 weeks after actually building the company, we learned that there was actually no demand for what we offered. So the core hypothesis in 2008 of we're going to develop digital business models for corporates was just proven to be wrong. So we said, okay, let's just do what is growing now and what we can see. And that was social media, that was digital marketing and experience. We kind of flipped the model a bit. One Lufthansa, one Deutsche Telekom, so T-Mobile, or the holding of T-Mobile, and scaled the model up, and I would say until 2012 to be the biggest social media marketing agency across Germany. And then in 2012, the CEO of Lufthansa at that time, Christoph Bornschein, approached me and said, we had that meeting where you said we're capable of creating value through digital. That has been interesting. It was 2 years ago at that point. Could you help us build that? We now want to buy that.
Now we're ready.
So it only took 4 years to kind of convince the market or wait for the market to be mature enough to build what we wanted to build. So we basically split the company, built a holding on top of that, kept the agency business because it was successful at that point. It still is. And built a consultancy offer on top of that is focused around CEOs that actually want to build digital value creation. So amongst others, every single German automotive company has been our client on that.
Awesome.
So today it is a fully integrated model around the development, organizational development, buy and build strategies of digital value generation and the marketing of that across Germany, Europe, the US, and soon to come Asia. We've just been talking about that.
Awesome. And so, what's that like when you're like, okay, so we're 4 years early.
It's bad, and we didn't know that it was 4 years. Could have been 10.
Yes. Well, what kept you guys going? Okay, all right. We know at some point this digital value creation element of our business is going to hit. But in the meantime, we've got to sort of pivot and sort of keep that floating in the air, but still deliver for our clients that we've got. What was that about?
I think the feeling wasn't, we know it is going to hit. I think the feeling of the first day is understanding that the hypothesis on what we built the company would not work out. That was a feeling of we failed. Building an agency, and we never did that prior to that. So none of us, 3 founders, has been an agency person.
That's how the best agencies are formed.
Yeah.
No experience whatsoever. Just build something cool.
It was just basically the backup strategy, not having to tell anyone that we failed. We kind of only pivoted in order to not tell anyone that the newest idea that we came up with was just not scaling.
The shelf over here. Look at the shiny new pieces to be built.
Yeah, so we made everyone believe that this was what we had in mind from day one on. And actually, the cool thing is, and that only proved to be right from an ex post perspective, is we were right in our first assumption on where the business would be going. We were just too early. So basically, we built out our B strategy, the backup plan, and had the opportunity of actually then later on building what we always wanted to build, which is great. So it is kind of, I don't know, happy end kind of story.
But it's cool because I think that's a really great lesson for entrepreneurs, because I think oftentimes you get such tunnel vision. Okay, but if this is the one thing we do. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna fall completely apart. And what you guys were able to do was okay, so our hypothesis on option A doesn't seem to work today. So let's pivot and find and build something else. And hey, if we'll put that on the shelf, and if option A ever comes back again, it's been sitting on the shelf. So
and it's still something that we consult corporates on, and still a lot of corporates do not see that. I think that notion of portfolio of bets. So there is 5 probable ways where the market is going to be going. Proves to be true for an automotive company as well. Moving away from that, we've got one idea, selling cars. We've got the idea of selling cars, selling mobility, selling charging solutions, and all that kind of stuff. So managing a portfolio of bets in order to mitigate risk of one of the business models still is something that I speak about quite a lot.
And what's been the biggest pushback you've probably seen recently? Because I think now you've got all these all car companies, you've got the phones, you've got the telecoms. What for the clients who are like, I'm not sure. Where's that pushback coming from?
So for us, it's not really pushback. It's the most challenging industry, even though it is the industry with the highest potential to change. It is manufacturing. So what we're doing quite a lot lately, and seem to be kind of the focal point of digital transformation of industries, really is the question: will manufacturing companies become digital players? Will logistic companies become digital players? So kind of moving a bit backwards from the customer-facing interface into real understanding supply chain, understanding manufacturing, understanding the shop floor. That for us really is something that is exposing us to interesting questions that we actually never thought about prior to that.
So there's a lot of, especially here in the States, about what's the future of manufacturing is going to look like, how AI is going to replace all truck drivers.
Those questions.
So for you guys, when you're getting those questions from your clients, what are you saying to them?
So we're now about 2.5 years in, did quite some interesting projects in the chemical industry, for example. Flow production manufacturing, which is rather interesting. It's all about pipes and heavy industry. So for us, it was really hard in the first days to understand what is the issue. How does it work today? So how does a shop floor operate? How do you connect production robots with the next machine and stuff like that? So really assessing what is there, assessing what is done today, and applying what we've learned on the customer-facing businesses was kind of the challenging thing. Awesome. But it's possible, and I think too few people that come from that customer-facing problems are interested in going on to the B2B business models, even though a lot of value is created and a lot of the capabilities that you have from the customer-facing business models are massively missing in B2B business models. So just an example, because you said, or you talked about the AI thing. If you understood how customer segmentation on a website, personalization on a website works, and the data analytics that is attached for that, the way machines are connected today is way worse and way less complicated than that issue on the customer interface side. So applying mythology, technology to how to optimize the runtime of a machine, totally possible. Just no one is touching that for the complexity that is attached to that, at least from the perception.
Yeah, because I think it's, oh my God, it's going to be so difficult. And
yeah,
like, well,
no. It is difficult.
It is.
And it's heavyweight kind of thing, but if you look into how does predictive maintenance work of a, let's just take a track trailer and the cooling machine on there, so cooled kind of strawberries or whatever. If you start correlating the runtime of the trailer and the truck with that and the cooling machine, you start to understand that Google Analytics is way more advanced than what they're using in there.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing I think that we oftentimes forget, that, like, you know, we've gotten so sophisticated. Like, I always use the example of, okay, when I first started in advertising, I was a project manager, and I worked on building these giant, over-the-top, super heavy-duty websites.
Yeah.
And it required a gazillion developers to make all this stuff happen. Like, to build one-minute video required a Flash developer, a tweener.
It was rocket science.
It was literally rocket science. You need at least 6 people to make a 1-minute video, and each person had a specialized skill as we did that. So I flipped to now, where I can go on iMovie and drag in a bunch of clips and videos and make a video that's solid enough for one of my clients to use at one of their events.
Yeah.
And it takes me maybe an hour.
And actually, what we feel with digitalization developing really into value chains is that it is a massive loss that this kind of capability and this kind of technology is only applied to the customer facing sides. The kind of levers of value oftentimes prove to be way bigger if you apply that to deep down B2B kind of things.
There's so many problems. I think, and that's the thing, that people get so stuck on, well, if I make this very high tech for customer service processes, like figuring out the analytics of using a net base to figure out
as you say,
this many people love this post who are in New York City, who are 35-year-old women, who are all women of color. Like, you can get that granular, but try and figure out the cooling system so that it doesn't knock off a truck.
Yeah.
One of these is not as complicated. Just
what is complicated, and that's what we learned, is the client relationship. So a production company, let's just take any, has never seen people that wear sweatpants when coming to meetings, that sport the new sneakers and stuff like that. So tapping into a boardroom of a production company and seeing how conservative they are, how far away from my world they are, and finding a language, finding a narrative to connecting into them, that has proved to be the kind of harder part.
So how have you guys done that?
I think it's twofold. On one hand side, we were quite successful and nimble in really understanding how it works. So that
people are saying,
oh no, not at all. No, not at all. So we really dove into that. So really nimbly tried to understand what is a supply chain of whatever heating solutions. And then we build cases that actually show that there is value in looking at that and applying our skills. And I think that with the combination of tight networks, so manufacturers are part of a really tight network. They know each other. In Europe, a lot of them are family-owned companies. There is a foundation for family-owned companies that makes them exchange. So scaling the success stories in there and getting high profile on that, and pretty outspoken on supply chain is our issue. If you want to compete with Amazon on the last mile, you have to think about logistics, and logistics players have to innovate in that field. I think making that visible then helped to actually scale and win business in that field, which we did.
So now that you've gotten,
credibility, visibility, I think that's is the case.
Well, I think that's the thing. Once you show one that you can do this, they all tell their friends, and then they're all like, oh wait, we've got to use TLGG because nobody else knows how to do this properly. Yeah. Have you seen a difference in working with US clients versus EU-based clients?
It's really interesting since I feel that other than in the client-facing businesses where there's a lot more maturity in the US to think about that, so looking into customer experiences and the way of how they're created, when it comes down to manufacturing and kind of value chain processes, there's such a lot that US companies can learn from EU production companies. So what you see is on a kind of macroeconomical global scale, the chances of European companies sit within those deep down business value chains where they are really good in understanding how to automate, how to scale up, how to reduce costs, integrate tasks and stuff like that. So predictive maintenance, if you look into Siemens compared to GE, for example, they are 2 years ahead.
Wow.
So I think that Europe is a lot about processes, whereas the US is a lot about customer demand and customer connectivity.
So even though...
And combining those perspectives just makes it perfect.
So why do you think the US is so far behind?
I'm only a hypothesis on that. I think the US is from a culture perspective, it is customer oriented. So it's that the focus has always been on we've produced stuff, however we did that, and now we're going to sell that, and the kind of professionalization, gaining knowledge, understanding it deeper, always happened to be more on the how do we sell that kind of side. I think the German engineering, if you look into Porsche cars or Volkswagen cars, the notion has always been how can we make that even more perfect, forgetting that someone has to pay for that. So kind of the downside, and that is
more expensive.
It's a told story. So Volkswagen back in the days tried to have a low price car to sell it in Asian markets. And actually, guess what happened? They weren't capable of building one because they always wanted it to be too perfect to be cheap. Yeah. And I think that notion around the engineer sitting in the garage, optimizing all and everything over and over and over again, helps to integrate digital capabilities into value chains of manufacturing or all that kind of stuff, forgetting about the need to actually sell that.
Well, it's like the process is great.
Yeah, but the outcome at some points is just too expensive to take that kind of discount car example. And they never push through. The end of the true story is Volkswagen had to stop that discount car project for the Asian market because they weren't capable building a cheap car because they always felt it's not perfect.
And so it's kind of like, here in the US, that's our phrase, the perfect can be the enemy of the good.
Yeah. And I think the German engineer wouldn't agree.
So for you, we were just chatting earlier, you basically live on a plane. So for what's it like for you to sort of see these different perspectives and these different lenses of clients, and your lens is so bespoke because of what you're able to see and be able to predict. How are you advising clients today in terms of how to be ready for the next 3 or 4 years?
I think so. What is great about that is the cultural mixture. So contributing from both kind of core capabilities, being able to kind of cross-reference the American discussion around customer experience that is far ahead the European discussion back into European conversation, and to feed that into is just amazingly great. So I enjoy that. I enjoy the kind of intercultural thing. What we're seeing is that most of the global players we're working for, and we're talking about OEMs, since Ford is our client as much as Porsche is our client, so kind of having a global perspective on that combines both of the capability sets and that creates global competitiveness for our client, needs to have those influence. And we're not talking about Asia, because what you can learn in Asia contributes to that even more.
Awesome. And so you live on planes. When you're not living on planes, how are you running this business?
On Slack. Which allows to run the business on planes if you're connected with Wi-Fi. And just to have that on the record, I was flying on KLM yesterday, and I like KLM and KLM's customer experience, but they didn't have Wi-Fi on board of my flight. Change that.
So this is the thing that as we've grown, we've become more global. Yeah. And I have, sometimes when I'm flying cross country, actually, I don't mind if there's no Wi-Fi because I have 6 hours.
I do.
But when traveling overseas, like I was saying, I was in Cannes last weekend, and coming back, the Wi-Fi was terrible on Tap Portugal.
Now we have them all.
and I was so aggro about it because like I know I'm coming back to the East Coast. I have so much work to get done.
It's getting down your productivity, and that is to your question. It's really. So I remotely run the company. So I'm kind of the absent CEO because I tend to be somewhere, which is the case in calls that I had today. So it is really about remote collaborative working, which means, and we're not at a point where it is 100% guaranteed that you always have that. Being connected is kind of the essence of what I need to be, and it's always hard if you're not connected, like yesterday night.
So, tell us a little more about that because I think, there's a lot of misconceptions around what a remote, running a company remote is successfully versus running from company remote and it not being successful. How have you guys been able to maintain that?
I think it really has to do something, or it has to do a lot with your personal perspective on human beings and how you put trust into them, into their capability and stuff like that. So for us, looking into labor law, that's always interesting. The end point of our discussion is a traditional employment contract has a number of hours in there that you have to work. I don't need that, to be honest. So I'm not buying hours of people. I'm buying results, their capability and stuff like that. So you have to have the trust that people, if you can see them or not, and know what they're doing, where they're doing that, will be pursuing what they are pursuing, take responsibility for that, take ownership for that. Because you are letting go of control, and I think that putting trust in people, not controlling people, but making them kind of measurable, because we need to build at some point.
You'll be able to tell some point.
It's important, and this is really what we invested quite a lot into. So great software that supports that process, and I think that Slack and the growth of Slack really popped it to a certain degree. Having the best tools, having support with travel management software and a backbone that allows that. So having processes and really rigid processes that are only there to create personal freedom, and that's kind of feels like a contradiction
for us.
If
you put processes in place so that people can do whatever they need to do, as long as the results happen, that's fine.
And that is we genuinely trust the people we hire, and we genuinely get them on board to do the magic that they're on board for, and do not follow up with means of control. And that, I think, is really important. Your perspective on people and human beings as trustworthy, and claiming ownership and taking responsibility.
So I think that's a really great way to sort of frame a lot of this, because I think remote working requires a level of trust. How do you find the employees who you think are going to be ones who are going to be trustworthy? Like, what are your methods for doing that? Especially since, you're on the road all the time.
I think that kind of the method turned around from kind of going spear hunting for those unicorns. It is now flipped. Since we're 250 people, we're quite visible. The truth today is the candidates that fit to us find us. So we got applications from the people that we want to have for being a fairly known employer brand, fairly known for the trust that we're putting into people, and what we're giving back for that. I think that it's quite the same, and we've been talking about that with family entrepreneurs. People that are great and fit to us, so those unicorns, are networked and tell each other if one of those is treated great and has a great job. So people apply, and it's getting better and better, interestingly, that we find to be supporting what mission we're on.
So it's the great culture of TLGG that starts to spread.
I'm completely biased on that. So
totally biased.
The answer is maybe ask someone at TLGG about that. I'm kind of the worst person to talk about the culture. Because I tend to always say, yes, it is the great culture, but who knows?
It's very different. It's all good. Well, no, I think that's the thing. It's oftentimes difficult for folks to understand as to why you can grow a company of 2 or 3 people in a matter of 8 years. It comes from
because you don't ask the question why. You just ask the question why not. So there is companies that have 250 people. Why can't we be the ones building one?
Why not? It's exactly the point.
It's like with speaking French. There is people speaking French, so why can't I? How's your French, by the way? Talking about can.
So my French is a little terrible.
Yeah.
Even though I do have a French last name, which is hilarious because people see my name on a credit card at the hotel, and they start talking to me in French, and I'm like, parlez-vous français? Parlez-vous français? That's about as far as I can go.
Okay.
I am trying to teach myself with Babbel. And I'm hoping by the time I get to Canada, although everyone speaks English there, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm going to spend a good part of the summer, hopefully, in Europe. So I want to get a few more languages under my belt, and especially this weekend, chatting with a bunch of Germans. I was like, okay, I don't want to learn this.
Don't try German because German, from kind of an efficiency standpoint, there is about 90 million people speaking German. So you can learn a language that is totally complicated in order to communicate with 90 million people that can speak English. So don't do it.
Okay, lesson here. Don't need to learn German.
French, on the other hand side, if you're looking into regions where French is spoken, so it makes sense as much as Spanish makes sense.
Although I do have Google Translate on my phone, so I'm like, here.
And talking about Babbel, for me, Babbel is one of the examples for a company that never asked the question of why should we be successful, and always came up with that why not. They're from Berlin.
I had no idea.
They're now based in New York as well, kind of rendered into the US. But Babbel is one of those kind of companies that really just ask the question, how can we improve learning a language, and then scale that. So for me, a great example on how to build a company. Babbel, great company. Great consumer company in that case.
So question for you. So you've got Bornschein and not daughters. What are you investing in?
No daughters.
No daughters.
Yeah. I do quite a lot of business-to-business software as a service startups. That is kind of the category. So HR tech is big. Automation of production is big. I just recently invested into business process mining, so the automated understanding of what is wrong in your business processes.
That's awesome.
It's actually the founder of SAP, Hasso Plattner, one of the founders, operates an institute in Potsdam, which is one of the best software institutes in Europe, the Hasso Plattner Institute. And he's educating great artificial intelligence engineers. And I had the opportunity to invest into a small team that is actually building software that automatically analyzes what has gone wrong on your shop floor and is making suggestions on what to change in your machine park and stuff like that. I invested into that, so really deep tech, impressive engineers doing things. So it really is the category of, and that is kind of consistent to what I said, it is the category of large enterprise and the whole bundle of their processes, how will they be digitalized? Because what I think is we're kind of on the end stage of customer-focused innovation. So we've seen quite a lot of money poured into that. But the B2B production side, value chain-based development that is improving corporate processes has just started.
So it's just in its infancy now. There's so much runway for it.
Yeah, and we're not even close to having seen all of the innovation, all of what machine learning could do to the production process of copper, to just name one.
Well, that's the thing. I think he is such a blue sky for that, because there's you're looking at, you can only get to a certain point of customer service, but from business to business, there's so much to do because it's business to business. And
the market is not yet decided, not even close to being decided. So there is some unicorns. So business process mining, there is Celonis out of Munich with a valuation of about $1 billion. So it is entering a maturity that we saw in gaming. And I always started early stage. So when we started businesses, and that kind of closes the loop to what I just said, it was always If you just looked into pitches, it was like, yeah, or it's just not going to work. So it is this kind of stuff that I'm investing into that could work and then would be great or not.
All right, that's all good. So, really important German question. Because at some point I'll be in Berlin this year.
Yeah.
Okay, where am I going?
Berlin, summer.
Yes.
You should take the beaches at Spree River, quite obviously, and you should reserve some time to go on a rental car and drive up to the Baltic Sea and sit yourself on the Baltic Sea. It's a 90-minute car ride. Send me an email. I'll recommend places, and I'll not say them on record because I don't want to see all of you there.
Exactly. Well, that's the most important. That's why I want to ask the locals because you all know the best places to really go. Okay, and what am I going to eat?
That's interesting because it's really Berlin, as much as New York is highly trend driven. So Scandinavian cuisine is big now, and local cuisine is big now. So you either go to Lokal, which is a restaurant that only uses products that have been sourced less than 20 kilometers around the restaurant. Which is great. Or you go for where the celebrities go and where you can buy Kobe beef, and that would be Grill Royal. And you have a look on how celebrities out of the German media that you don't know behave as if you would.
That's amazing. Okay, and last question. So you've been in the TLGG about 8-9 years now.
11.
11 years now.
Yeah.
This is the longest you've been somewhere.
Yeah.
What do you see yourself doing in the next 18 to 24 months?
So it's definitely going to be, and this is kind of the topic of my weeks. It's going to be the opening of our Asia office. That's going to be for sure. So TLGG Singapore within the next 18 months is going to become reality. We'll be a 3-continent global player, leaving out Australia. Australia. This is definitely what we'll be doing. I think pushing through that mission that we're on. Being the global boutique for digital business models is kind of what we're doing and what I'll be pursuing the next 18 months.
Awesome. Well, it's been a fantastic conversation with you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to put in a few of your recommendations for Berlin.
And you could just, we could build a back channel that is off the record.
We'll have a little Slack chat conversation about that. But thank you so much for talking to us. And thank you all for listening.